It doesn't always take a genius to know when something is a hoax. You might remember the Heen family back in 2009 perpetrated the story about their kid being taken up by a UFO-shaped wayward balloon. It was eventually reported, so was the story. But then, there are things like the jackalope, the fictitious rabbit creature with antlers that roams the prairies of America. The definition of a hoax is a humorous or malicious deception. But before it's opened and exposed, how do we really know what's inside? Such is the case of a strange talking mongoose named Gef. Yes, you heard me right. The creepy critter tale takes us to the Isle of Man, United Kingdom, 1931, past the majestic remains of grand castles and scenic coastline. In a remote farmhouse, the Irvings lived in Cashin's Gap. The family consisted of both parents pushing 60 and their 12-year-old daughter, Lori. Jim Irving was a struggling salesman who was trying his hand at sheep farming in his retirement. It wasn't very successful, and the family struggled to make ends meet. They had no electricity, phone, or radio. The nearest neighbors were over a mile away. One gloomy September evening, as the family sat down to supper, the noises began. It was described as blowing, spitting, growling sounds coming from behind the cabinets and the farmhouse walls. Jim immediately thought that it was rats, as the strange noises persisted over the following days. He set traps and strategically laid down poison to no avail. In desperation, he even tried to flush the intruder out by growling like a dog. To his surprise, it growled right back at him. The elusive creature became quite a mimic, eventually producing sounds as Jim threw them out. Soon the Irvings could name an animal and the creature would respond with the appropriate imitation. Goat! Young Vori and her friend laughed and asked it to repeat nursery rhymes.
What?
It obliged in a clear, squeaky voice.
Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, they all fall down.
Soon it was speaking freely. It introduced itself as Gef, claiming to be an extra special mongoose, born in Delhi, India in 1852. Ironically, a local farmer had introduced mongooses to the island to get rid of the rabbit population 20 years earlier. Gef was soon having regular conversations with Vori and her father, though he seemed less friendly with Mrs. Irving, and he was known to nip at her and attack. He began nesting in a box up at Vori's room. The family called it Gef's sanctum. Despite not knowing exactly what he was, he became a member of the family. During the days, he would roam the island on car or bus bumpers and go people watching. In the evening, he returned home to spread news and gossip he had picked up during his daily travels. Sometimes he barked out items from the local newspaper. When he grew tired of chit-chat, he would yell out,
Vanished!
and make himself scarce. Jim once said, it announced his presence by calling us by our Christian names.
Lori! Margaret! Jim!
Its hearing powers were phenomenal. It was no use whispering, as it could detect the faintest whisper from 20 feet away. Then it would repeat everything it had just heard in secret. Jim Irving stopped working one day, and as the family gathered around, he asked Gef, what exactly he was. He told them he was an
earthbound spirit and a ghost in the form of a mongoose.
However, most chillingly, Gef warned them,
I am extra clever, but not always kind.
So Gef assumed the role of family pet, but ingratiated himself to take on household jobs. He woke someone up if they overslept, and went downstairs to turn off the stove if it was forgotten. However, his warnings about being cruel were right. Gef started to lose his temper often. He called Jim once a fat-headed gnome, and he threatened to kill them all. Vori became scared of Gef and snuck to sleep in her parents' bed to avoid being alone in the dark with him. However, the mongoose didn't take well to this and told Jim,
I will follow her wherever you put her.
But Gef kept earning his keep. He often brought rabbits home for Margaret to cook in exchange for tidbits of cookies, sweets, and chocolate.
Yum!
treats would be left for him to find in the barn rafters where he liked to forage. It seems Gef enjoyed singing as much as talking. His favorite tune was Carolina Moon, which he would croon along with on the gramophone.
The moon was
On one occasion, he offended Vori's mother with a lewd rendition of Home on the Range.
Home on the range, where the deer and the antelope.
He said he picked it up from some raucous bus drivers. Margaret scolded the obscenity, saying, "You know, Gef, you are no animal." Of which Gef replied,
Of course not. I am the Holy Ghost.
According to Jim, they barricaded the bedroom door one night. Gef had been operating on a very short fuse lately, and his temper was scaring them. They saw the door bulging in, as though some terrific force was thrusting against it. Jeff's queer high voice shouted,
I'm coming in. Don't think I'm not.
A few seconds later, a heavy bottle kept in the room crashed against the bedstead. Gef seemed to massively enjoy provoking Vori's parents in deliberate calculation. One night, he made a nuisance of himself by sighing and groaning loudly for 30 minutes without pause. He later confessed,
I did it for the devilment.
but Jeff's sadistic behavior and anger didn't end there. Another account of Jeff's malevolence happened as Margaret was walking home and found herself being pelted with stones. "Is that you, Gef?" she called out.
Why, yes, Maggie, the witch woman, the Zulu woman, the Honolulu woman.
His sarcastic temper had no bounds. As with any tale, it starts by word of mouth. Jeff's existence hit the small Manx newspapers first. A series was ran of gently mocking articles about the Dalby spook, as it was first dubbed in the local press. The publication led to Vori becoming mercilessly teased at school. But Jeff's fame spread to the mainland after Jim Irving persuaded a psychic researcher to take an interest in the case. Captain McDonald was sent in to investigate and to determine exactly what Gef was. The first thing he tried to do was coax Gef out of his crack in the wall to pose for a picture. In response to this, Gef squirted water in his face. He obviously was not going to cooperate. So it was suggested to obtain a sample of Jeff's fur for examination. The mischievous critter provided a tuft of hair, pulled from the family dog. Harry Price, a paranormal researcher, sent 4 plaster blocks to press Jeff's paw prints into. Jeff reluctantly did as he was asked, but assisted making the impressions was
hard as hell.
Mr. Peacock at the British Natural History Museum's Zoological Department determined one print may have been made from a dog, but the rest did not match and were not from any mammal known to him. And they most certainly did not belong to any mongoose. Jeff took an instant dislike in the presence of investigator MacDonald.
I've been looking at that man, and I just don't like him.
The captain reported he witnessed shrill screams and knocking all over the house. MacDonald crept quietly up the stairs, hoping to catch a glimpse of Jeff off guard. But the attempt was foiled when he stepped on his board and fell noisily back down. Jeff flew by him on the stairs and indignantly yelled in fear.
He's coming, the dirty old sleech.
It was the last time a stranger ever saw the elusive mongoose. But even as Jeff's notoriety expanded, his visits to the Irvings became few and far between. In 1936, Price published his findings in a book. He did not accuse the Irvings of perpetrating a hoax. Neither did he validate their claims. After Price's book was published, the Irvings suddenly left Cashin's Gap for the mainland. And Jeff did not follow them. An actor by the name of Leslie Graham became the new owner of the farmhouse. Mr. Graham said he never heard anything strange, and that Jeff never came to introduce himself. But in 1947, he shot and killed a furry-looking animal that seemed to be neither ferret, stoat, or weasel. It answers to all the descriptions, the puzzled man told the press. He too, though, left Cashin's Gap, and the farm was eventually demolished in 1970. That same year, a magazine reporter managed to track Vori Irving down for an interview about her strange childhood experiences. She was reluctant to talk about Jeff, but eventually said yes, there was a little animal who talked and did all those other things. He said he was a mongoose, and we should call him Jeff. But I do wish he had left us alone. All those years later, she was adamant that the slain animal was not Jeff. Vori never married and took any secrets with her to her grave. She died in 2005. Now let's look at the archives of photos and evidence. Mona the dog. Mr. Irving showing evidence of Jeff, scratches, and hiding places. His inner sanctum. The paw prints. The hair sample. A self-portrait by Jeff, showing he could hold a pencil. A fence post perch with Jeff on it. A photo that ran in the newspaper with the articles. So, was Jeff a poltergeist, imaginary pet, animal familiar, or a hoax? An animal familiar is said to be chosen by a spellcaster to aid him along his life's journey. It retains the appearance of a normal beast, but exhibits special abilities in the presence of whomever finds it. Could someone in the 19th century India have chosen a mongoose as his spirit animal? Whatever the explanation may be, we do know one thing, that Gef can never go home again. And the story of the talking mongoose will last for generations.
You better believe it. Shining on the one who waits for me.